Hello, and welcome to this webinar on tips and tricks for managing small projects. Obviously, you are going to be watching this on replay, and so I hope that what you do is take some notes, and then if you have any questions or issues, please email me at karen@projectmanagementinsight.com with your questions, and I will be happy to answer them. Now, the recording of the webinar will be sent out to you shortly via a link. So yeah, as I said, that's what you'll be watching, no doubt, as you're not here with me live tonight. All right, so let's get started. We've basically covered that already. So just a little bit about me. My name is Karen Cherrett, and I am a project manager and a change manager in terms of certified project manager and certified change manager. I've got about over 25 years experience in project management, and my experience managing projects started with managing small projects when I wasn't a formal project manager. And so I gained a lot of my experience and knowledge from that premise of working with and managing small projects. In one of my job roles, I actually managed projects for 5 senior managers at the one time. And so, as you can imagine, my life was intense and full on and interesting because I had 5 different projects running at the one time, and I had to learn to be efficient and effective and manage those in the best possible way. And it wasn't until some time later that I decided to, when I wasn't getting jobs as a project manager because I didn't have formal project management qualification, that I decided to go and get that qualification in order to be able to apply for a formal project management role. So I have managed projects from the smallest project running, for a couple of hours to a day, to very large projects up to millions of dollars. And so it's this experience that I will be sharing with you in this and upcoming webinars that I have scheduled, and you can find out about those on the Project Management Insight website. My aim is to support all people managing projects, whether they're big or small, to make your life easier and allow you to work more efficiently, because there are ways that you can undertake work, that you can manage things, that you can do things if you learn these tips and tricks that will make your life easier and make managing your projects a lot simpler and more efficient. And I guess before I go too much further, what I want to do is talk to you about the definition, or my definition, of a small project. I think oftentimes we get hung up on this word project. So for me, what I want to describe this as is a task, something that I want to undertake, and that might be taking an overseas trip, for example. That's a personal project that you would have, a small project that you would have, and yet it's a personal project, and it is a project. And it could also mean the producing something for a client. And tonight in this webinar, I'm going to be coming from that particular focus. So when I speak to you about the different tips and tricks that I present to you, I'm talking to you about them from the perspective of you as a person delivering something to a customer or a client or someone else. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't use these same tips and tricks for yourself. All you need to do is think of yourself as that customer. So you put yourself in the place of the customer when I talk about the customer, and answer the questions from your own perspective, because it really doesn't make a difference from that perspective. And yet I just wanted to set the scene up front now so that you have an understanding when I'm talking about things and terms that that's where I was coming from. All right, so let's dive in. What are you going to learn on this webinar? What am I going to cover today? Well, I'm going to cover why locking in your deliverables is the most important thing you can do. Now, a deliverable is something that the other person wants. So, as I said, take that in the context of what is it that you want delivered as an outcome for your project. I'm going to talk to you about the project agreement template. This is a template that I've developed, a simple one-page template to help you get clear on the project outcomes and why it's beneficial to use it. I'm going to talk to you about why it's important to understand who you are dependent on and be clear about expectations. You will notice that a number of times during this webinar, I will use the word clarity, and it's the best thing that you can understand and take away from this webinar is that the more clarity you have, the easier your job will be. Then I'm going to dive into time and not underestimating your time, the time that it's going to take you to complete this particular project that you have. I'm then going to talk about why it's important to be aware at the start of your work, of what you're doing for your delivering for your project, of any criticalities with timeframes. Sometimes we tend to overlook this and it creates problems for us. And then lastly, I want to talk to you about communication. And as you can see, what I have here is communicate, communicate, and communicate. All right, so let's dive into this first topic area. Why locking in your deliverables is the most important thing you can do. Now, the problem we often face when managing small projects is unhappy customers. How many times have you started a project for somebody, got partway through it or got to the end and found that you had a very unhappy customer because you didn't deliver exactly what it was that they wanted you to deliver? They were unhappy because they had a different idea of what you would deliver to them than what was actually delivered. This causes conflict, sometimes non-payment of your invoice, and sometimes it may even mean that your customer takes you to court or small claims tribunal. And so there's fairly good reason why it's important that you lock in your deliverables. Now, if you don't lock in your deliverables, what happens is you dive into the work that you do with unspoken expectations and assumptions, both yours and from the customer. And this ultimately means that there's a lack of clarity about the entire project. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this word clarity is huge in my experience of managing small projects. Not that it's not important in big projects, but definitely in small projects. So we think we know what our customer wants, and they think they know what they're getting. And yet, we're both wrong. So these unspoken expectations and assumptions cause a lack of clarity for both sides, both us and the customer. And so by not gaining the right amount of clarity before we commence the work, what does it lead to? Ultimately, it leads to trouble. and our relationship will generally be off to a bad start even before we've commenced any real work. Now, this is one of the key things that I've found creates so many problems for me in terms of my ability to efficiently and effectively complete my project. And so that's why I created the project agreement template. It's a one-page template so that you can work with your customer or client to capture the assumptions and expectations, both yours and theirs, before you start any work. And you'll also be able to gain a clear understanding of what they are expecting you to deliver and when by. Sometimes by questioning them in order to complete this template, you might find that the date they have in mind of when they want their project completed by is not possible or not negotiable. So it's one of those timeframes that's not possible to let slip. And wouldn't it be good if you knew that before you started any work for your customer? The more time you take at the front end of any of your projects to gain clarity and mutual understanding between you and your customer, the better outcome you will have. You will be clearer on what is required from you, and that will ultimately make your job easier. Your customer will be clear on what they're going to receive and when, and so there'll be no misunderstandings. Basically, what I'm saying here is that the stronger the relationship you have at the start of or even prior to any work that you undertake, the better the outcome is going to be. Now, at the end of this webinar, if you haven't already been to the Project Management Insight website and downloaded the project agreement template, I will have the link available at the end of the webinar for you so that you can go and download that free template and begin to use it. And you know, it's really, really valuable no matter what projects you are undertaking that you gain sign-off before you start any work. This is really key. As soon as you start work, if you haven't gained the clarity of expectations and assumptions, you're going to land yourself in trouble. And so if I can't stress anything else and tell you that the biggest tip I can give you is to gain this clarity and be clear on expectations and assumptions, then don't take anything else away from this webinar, because this is it. This is the real key thing that I want you to take away. And it's simple. It's just a matter of questioning. It's a matter of asking the questions up front so that you do have that clear understanding. All right. The next thing I want you to think about is when you're going to undertake your work for your project, who are you dependent on? Are there any other people at all that you need to depend on? And there might be more than one. You might have a number of people that you are going to depend on. And what do I mean when I talk about someone that you're going to depend on? If you're a person that's delivering landscaping services, you will be dependent on the providers of mulch, the providers of rock, the providers of wood for edging. You will be dependent on perhaps a concrete truck. You will be dependent on the nursery for delivery of plants, as an example. So they are all people that you would be dependent on. If you're someone that works in the advertising or marketing space, you're going to be dependent on perhaps other people within your ad agency or your marketing agency who might be providing copy, who might be providing design work. You are dependent on those people in order for you to deliver the finished product to your client. So think about who are the other people that will be working with you in order to deliver the outcome for your customer. Now, the thing is, as soon as we bring these other people into our project and we are dependent on them to deliver us something at a set time, all of a sudden that changes our ability to do our job. Because if we're the only person responsible for it, we know that we might need to pull an all-nighter, as an example, in order to finish the project on time. But if I'm dependent on Joe to deliver a piece of work to me and he falls sick, he gets too many jobs that he needs to complete and doesn't prioritize mine as important, then all of a sudden my deadline slips because of someone else. So it's really important that you consider how many other people are you dependent on and what are you dependent upon them for. Now, I spoke to you about completing the project agreement with your customer. Consider that it might also be valuable to complete a project agreement with these other people involved in your project. If you treat them like they are a contractor, someone that's going to deliver a service to you, wouldn't you want the clarity in your relationship with that person about expectations, assumptions, getting clear on exactly what is going to be delivered and when, so that it then means, again, there's clarity all around. There's clarity with you, and there's clarity with the other person, and there's room for negotiation. As an example, we're back to the discussion earlier about timeframes and things. It allows for discussions to take place so that everyone is coming from the same place. You're all on the same page in terms of the work that needs to be undertaken in order to successfully complete your particular project. This is not about making this more difficult than it needs to be. As I said earlier at the start of the webinar, the key here is the more clarity you create up front before you actually start any work, the easier and more efficient all of you will be. Not only you, but also the people that you're dependent on. And so take the time to create that clarity, create that sense of everyone understanding what needs to be done and when, and your life will be a whole lot easier. These sorts of misunderstandings are the things that create problems for us all around, whether that's from a time and delivery perspective, whether it's from a costing perspective. I mean, you might have costed your put in a quote to do work for a particular customer, and then you find that one of the people that was due to deliver you something couldn't do it and you had to pay extra freight to have it delivered. Well, all of a sudden your profit margin starts to diminish. And so, like I said, the more clarity you can create up front, the better it's going to be for you overall in terms of your project and managing the project in all areas. All right. So let's look at time, because we all know that we're often very, very busy. It feels like we don't have enough time. There's not enough time in our day. And when we get to the point of trying to work out how much time it's going to take for us to complete this project and deliver it for our customer, then we often create problems for ourselves because we jump to providing a crazy timeline that's unrealistic. And sometimes what I notice happens is this: we feel pressured by the customer to give them what they want, which might be something delivered within an unrealistic time frame. And in that, we are doing ourselves a disservice. Don't just say yes to a customer because you want the work. My experience is that the more upfront I am with a customer, the stronger our relationship. And in that place, the more honest I am, the more likely we are in the relationship to be able to negotiate an outcome, something that's going to work for both me and my customer. And I think this is one of those things where we tend to think that the customer has all the power, and that's not true. You don't want to be in a space of believing you have all the power either. What if you went in through the relationship and see it as a mutual relationship? So no one has power. You're two people, one person with a service, one person with a requirement. They want something. And so come to a place of mutuality about how it's going to work, that the person is going to get what they want, and ultimately you get what you want, which is to be paid for the delivery of your service. Now, as I said here, it's better to under-promise and over-deliver than the other way around. So if you say something will take 3 weeks and you deliver it a couple of days early, that's a great outcome for both you and the customer. And yet, if you say that you are going to be able to deliver this in 2 weeks, and in reality it's going to take 3, and then you're late delivering and not able to deliver at that 2-week point, what are you doing but creating a problem in your relationship? This ultimately flows over to the reviews the customers give you and whether they will recommend you to other people. So your reputation is on the line. And so I would say to you, don't underestimate your time. Allow yourself contingency time. Now, contingency time mightn't mean anything to you at this point in time. It is a project management term, so let me just explain what I mean. Contingency time is extra time built in to your delivery time frame for any problems or issues that are going to arise that will stop you from delivering. Let's look at it from this perspective. I am a pool installer, and I have to have the earth guys in to come and dig a hole in the backyard of the person's home. I then need the crane driver to arrive, and I need the pool to be delivered, and I need the crane driver to then take the pool from the truck and place it in the hole. Then there's all of the external fencing work and other work to be done around the pool. Now, if that was going to take 4 weeks, and we're doing it at the time of year when there is a big likelihood of, for example, that the weather is going to change and there are going to be wet days. The best thing I can do is factor in some additional time to my time frame to allow for the possibility of wet days. Now, I don't mean going crazy with this. If I say it's going to take 4 weeks, and in the likelihood within that 4 weeks there might be 1 or 2 wet days, then what I will do is add 2 days to that schedule. So I say 4 weeks and 2 days. So if it turns out that within that 4 weeks the weather's perfectly fine and I get to put the pool in the 4 weeks, absolutely brilliant. See, I've under-promised and over-delivered. But if, on the other hand, the weather does change, then I've got myself covered for at least 2 wet days, and the likelihood then of me still staying on track and being able to deliver is more likely. Now, of course, things happen. The weather is one of those things we can't control. And so we might have factored in 2 days extra on our delivery time frame. And it might be that for that particular week, it's, unseasonal weather and we've ended up with 5 very, very wet days. Well, that's okay, because what you do is you keep your customer up to date with what's going on, and you explain, which I'll get into the communication later on, but this is one of those key areas where you are in contact with your customer, keeping them up to date of exactly what's happening all the time. And yet, if you start off by factoring in some of that additional time, the likelihood of you being able to underpromise and overdeliver is going to be more likely than the other way around. So just be mindful of the time that you estimate that it's going to take for you to complete your project, and just be realistic. Be smart and be realistic. Your customer is going to be happier if you are more honest and truthful with them, rather than if you create some crazy time frame just to get the work and be dishonest, in other words, because you will be, and it will come back to bite you, believe me. Now, the other key thing in terms of timing is being able to understand up front if the time frame for delivery from the customer's perspective is critical. The thing is, your customer might assume that you understand that the date they've told you is critical. It's like a drop-dead date. Nothing can be, you can't go past that date. It must be delivered on that date. And yet, they haven't told you. Assumption, right? Back to project agreement. If you've fleshed out all of the assumptions, you're going to be clear. And I guess the project template does actually have this question: is this time frame critical? Because the best thing you can have and know is, yes, it's critical. I only have 3 weeks to deliver this particular project for this customer. Well, great. Then what you do is have the ability to know problems occur. It looks like we're not going to meet the time frame. Okay, I need to go and get additional resources and I need to charge extra for it. Well, that is something that you might be aware of up front, and so your quote would include all of that, rather than it being a case of, yes, we can do it, and then not realizing that it's critical. You think you've got extra time, or you could add extra time on and it's not a problem, and then it can't happen. You have to go and get extra staff in order to deliver it to the critical time frame. And guess what? You've burned money, and again, your profit margins go down. So ask this simple question: is the time frame critical? As I said, it's one of the questions on your project agreement template. It will make your job easier if you understand that up front. Go and ask the question. All right, so now let's talk about information. Clarity, clarity, clarity. I can't stress that enough. Whether it's timeframes or the nitty-gritty of what the customer is expecting you to deliver, the clearer you are before you start any work for them, the easier life will be. And I also mean that from the perspective of being able to say, no, I can't do that up front to the customer before you begin any work. Better to know that you won't be able to meet their unrealistic timeframes, or that they want twice as much from you in half the time and you don't have the support to deliver that. Okay, know that. Be clear. Be able to say, no, that won't work, or yes, I can deliver that, and it's going to take this many additional resources, and the price is then going to go up. So you need to be very, very clear about what you're able to deliver and how you are able to deliver it, and then what it's going to cost to be able to deliver it. And the more you can be clear with the customer about what you can and can't do, again, the stronger your relationship, the more honest and trusting the relationship will be, and the better the outcome for both you and your customer. And as I explained here, the more you understand, the more you can prepare. And that ultimately means that you will be more efficient and things will flow for you rather than it being a problem. So clarity, clarity, clarity. Just remember that and go back all the time and check, am I clear? Do I have enough information? If you don't, go and get it, because that's the best thing that you can do. Now, last and by no means least, the best thing you can do is communicate. Communicate, communicate, and communicate. If you've done the work to set the expectations up front and things happen that are unforeseen, then let your customer know. The more honest you are with them, the more they will trust you and appreciate what you do. If you hide problems or issues, and it then means you won't be able to deliver when you said you would, that's not going to help your reputation or the likelihood that they will recommend you to someone else. So tell them when you will be delivering whatever it is, prototypes, drafts, a first look at something for them to review or see. Tell them what it is and when you will be delivering it, and work with them to then check and verify and validate and get back to you with approval. So be clear on all of the steps that are going to be taken. Be clear on your expectations of them and their expectations of you, back to the project agreement template. And when you think that you are communicating enough, communicate more. It will never, ever do any harm. And most likely, it's going to have the opposite effect. So the more you communicate, the stronger your relationship will be, the more trusting your relationship will be, and it will do wonders for your reputation, and it will have you getting great reviews if they're important to you. So think about when you communicate, ask yourself the question, am I communicating enough? And if not, communicate more. If you're already communicating, communicate more. And don't be afraid to be open with your customer. If they get angry, that's okay. They can be angry. Being angry is okay. Being in that place of conflict, which we normally see is related to anger, in that place, if you're still talking to them, you can negotiate an outcome. So even though you might be communicating and thinking that it's causing problems, think about it as the more I communicate, the easier it's going to be for me to gain agreement with my customer in order to deliver and have their okay, and for them to be happy with whatever it is that I am delivering for them and the way that I'm delivering for them. So I want to ask now if you have any questions about what I've covered here or anything else in relation to managing small projects. I guess, what are the biggest problems that you have when you manage your projects? And what sort of tips or tricks or ideas or things would you like information about? Because I'm here to answer those questions for you now. I'm happy for you to send me an email, follow me on Twitter, and send me a tweet. You can comment on or send me a private message through the Project Management Insight Facebook page. There's lots of ways that you can communicate with me. So let me know what it is that will be your one takeaway once you've reviewed this webinar. I want to say thank you for attending. I am about to launch How to Efficiently Manage Small Projects training. It's a 6-module training containing both videos and audio files, plus a number of downloadable files for you to use. There's a project agreement template, a project plan worksheet, tips for managing your time, memory jogger, a discussion and action template for taking down details of meetings and discussions that you have with your customers. There's a problem management flow diagram to help you work through problems that arise. And there's a stress busting tip sheet. So there's quite a number of hours of training that you can access when you want to at any time yourself. And as I said, there's all of these additional resources for you that might help you manage your small projects more efficiently and more effectively. There's a coupon code that I've set up, which is webinar, and I've changed the dollar value of that to $100 tonight. So if you want to go and have a look at the training, follow the link in the next slide, and you will be able to see what's included, what it's all about, and as I said, use the coupon code webinar and get $100 off so that you can dive in and gain some additional knowledge and further tips and tricks and information. All right, so go to the projectmanagementinsight.com/resources for project managers. Download the free project agreement template. It is a template that you can fill out. As I said, it's going to help you create the clarity around expectations and assumptions from both your perspective and your customer's perspective. Also use the template with any other people that you are dependent on when you're working on the project, and hopefully it will help you to be in a better space to become more efficient, and so that makes it easier for you to manage your small projects moving forward. Thank you very much for joining. As I said, any feedback or comments or questions, please feel free to email me at Karen, Karen, at projectmanagementinsight.com, and I look forward to having you with me on future webinars, which you will be able to find scheduled, find the schedule for them on the front page of projectmanagementinsight.com. Okay, thank you and goodbye for now.